Everybody, welcome to Lyn's Crafts. I've got another episode of Mixed Media Monday for you today, and this time it's going to be an altered bottle jar. Really, I can tell the difference. Alright, I'm going to start with some gesso, just some plain white gesso, and a couple of molds. Most of these are IOD molds. A couple of them are just other molds from molds that I purchased. Alright, so let's get started. I did finally get it open. Alright, I'm going to start. I've just got a stencil brush. And I'm just going to start by stippling the paint on. I'm actually going to start with the lid. Alright, I'm going to do around the lid first. That will give me an idea where I need to stop, because I don't want to paint where the lid goes on. I don't really want to paint the lid on either. Alright, the reason I'm stippling instead of just brushing it on is because it gives a bit more tooth to the gesso and will help it stick to the bottle. Alright. Okay, now I've got it all the way around. I can remove the lid at this point. But why? I would suggest you probably remove the lid just so it doesn't glue down to the jar. Alright, then I'm just going to continue on and cover the whole jar except for, I'm going to make a mess on my mouse pad. I'm going to leave a spot where I can put this frame. So I'm going to leave a spot not gessoed. Alright, I'm going to probably put a piece of painter's tape there. And then I'm going to paint the rest of the jar. So I'll be back. Okay, I've done 2 coats on the jar. And I'm gonna start to shape these resin pieces. If I had just made them, if I had just poured them, they would still be flexible enough to form to the bottle shape. But I did them a while ago, so these are just out of my stash. So I'm just going to use my heat tool to warm them up. That will allow them to be flexible again. And then I'm going to shape them. Other than this one, it's just going to go on the lid. I'm going to shape them to the jar. Alright, so I'll give you a little demonstration of bumping the camera. Sorry for the noise. Just want to get it good and hot. Alright, hopefully that will do it. Okay, it's still not warm enough. I got it a little bit of a bend, but not enough. And don't worry, they will withstand a bit of heat. You don't want to just hold your heat tool over them, but in one spot. There we go. Alright, now it's quite warm, but not too warm for me to just hold it down with my fingers. Alright, just need to hold it down till it starts to cool off. Then it will retain the shape. If it's too hot for you to hold, you can use a pot holder or something to hold it down, and then excuse me, using a piece of painter's tape, just tape it down till it cools off. If I would have just poured this and it had just set, that's what I would do. I would hold it down with painter's tape and just leave it on the bottle till it's set. Alright? Alright. I'm going to continue on with the other pieces, and I'll be back when they're done. Okay. Now, the jar is completely dry. I've got the pieces shaped. I'm going to use this is some mixedmedia modeling paste. It's the only kind I've got. I would really prefer a light paste to do this with, but you go with what you got. I'm waiting on some to arrive, but it hadn't got here. So, now this is to create some additional texture as well as to glue the pieces down. So really, it's just rough and kind of whatever texture it comes out to. Well, I don't really like that. Whatever texture it comes out to, but I don't like that. Alright? Okay, I'm gonna let this piece dry. So what I'm gonna actually do, which I probably should have done first, is to remove the lid. I'm gonna set this aside and let it dry. Alright, so I'm gonna continue on. Sticking my finger in it. I'm gonna really try hard to leave that spot in the middle that I did tape off. Alright, may need a little cleaning up afterwards, and of course I'm getting it on everything that I don't want it on. Alright, so I'm going to continue on and stick the rest of these pieces down. Alright, I thought I would just come on just long enough to show you sticking on this last piece. Alright, you can see I've added the texture paste pretty much all the way around. There are a few spots that I've left the gesso texture showing. Alright, we've got the hole in the middle of the frame. What I'm gonna plan on doing is making this a light. I'm gonna put in one of those excuse me, little battery powered yeah, LED string lights. Alright, so I'm gonna let this dry overnight and try to hurry back in the morning and finish and get this still uploaded in time to be Mixed Media Monday. Alright, so wish me luck. Really, all I have left to do is to paint it and do a little stamping, etc. Maybe a little spraying. And I'll be back in the morning. Alright? I've let this dry actually for about 30 minutes. And I'm going to attempt to see if this is dry enough. You want to be sure and clean your stamp immediately. Alright, now it's time for some paint. I've got 2 bottles of Americana, Sea Aqua, and Sea Breeze. As you can tell, they're really close in color. The Sea Aqua is a little bit more of a green turquoise than the Sea Breeze. I'm going to try to use them a little bit in combination. We'll just have to see how that turns out. Alright, just one of the little tips that I do when I get new paint. I don't take the plastic off the lid. And I store my paints upside down, as I may have said before. That helps to keep the air out. Once the paint settles to the bottom, there's no way for air to get in the bottle. So it helps the paint not dry out so much. Alright. It does make it harder to dispense, though. Alright, so I'm going to start out with this Sea Aqua. And I've got a pretty grubby, scruffy brush. And I'm going to start around the details, kind of where the shadow would be. Alright, just trying to get the paint evenly distributed. Alright, so I'm going to continue on and do the rest of the elements the same way. Alright, I'll be back when this is done. Now I'm going to move on rather quickly to the Sea Breeze. I really don't want the Sea Aqua to dry before I'm adding the Sea Breeze. Now you can see on the bottle they're really quite a bit different. And yep, I'm going to get paint on me. And I may go back and darken up some of those areas. once again, I'll be back when this is done. It's a little easier to paint around the elements without, well, I say that this paint dries really quickly. Alright, I'll be back. Alright. I'm going to paint the elements also with this sea breeze. And again, I'm going to use a pouncing motion because of the deep detail. It will really help you get into those nooks and crannies. Alright, but as you can see, we've almost obliterated that sea aqua, so I will go back and add a bit of that. Just here and there. We're going to add some highlights to the elements as well to bring them out. Alright, but I'm going to actually go right around the center with a little bit of darker. Alright, so I'm just going to keep both of those open. You'll want to move the the jar around so you can see the details from all angles. That will ensure that you get every bit covered with paint. Alright, and while you're going along, you may see a spot or two you missed. Alright, so one last bit of detail. And I just can't help but touch where I just painted. And when you're doing this, don't worry too much if you get paint on the glass part, because you can always go back with your craft knife and get that off. Because there's so much texture in the background, there are quite a few spots that I missed. Alright, back in with a little bit of that sea aqua again. Alright, then go around and check around the lid. Okay, now I'm just going to let that dry. Alright, now what I've got is a couple of the Lindy Stamp Gang color shots. This one is a flat shot. It's one of the flat Fabio line. And this one is T-Bird Turquoise. This one is a glitz shot, and it's steel shimmer. Alright, so I'm going to start with the flat shot. And these are really thin, almost like a die. And unfortunately, I rarely use them. Not because of any reason other than they're kind of out of my line of sight. So I just never think of it. Alright, so that's going to add in some of that shadow I was wanting. Okay, not much, just a bit, and once it dries a little more, it will lighten up some. Okay. As you can see, right here is one of the spots I was talking about trying to fill in from every direction. So you can go back and put a little extra paint on there if you desire. I'm hoping that it will eventually get covered. Alright, don't worry about the drips and runs. That's something we kind of want. Alright, so I'm actually gonna add a bit just randomly and then give it a squirt of water. Alright, something like that. Now I'm just going to grab my heat tool real quick and give this a little blast. Alright, now I'm going to go with the glitz shot. And because this has mica powder in it, you're going to want to shake it. And you're probably going to want to shake it maybe a couple of times during the process, because it does settle out kind of quickly. Alright, so with this, I'm going a little bit more for the elements. If you don't shake it, at least kind of pounce around in the bottom a bit. Just anything to keep it blended up. Alright. Then again, we can just do a little bit. Round. And I didn't forget the lid, it's just not quite dry yet. Alright, now you can see how it's starting to take on a bit of that grungy appearance. Alright, I'm going to let that dry. Okay, now it's time for some highlights. And I'm just going to come back in with some gesso on a dry brush. And I mean dry. I'm going to pat it off and just get a bit. Just to hit the highlights of some of these elements. You can hit some of the texture in the background as well. Okay, something like that. This brush really has almost no give to it. I probably could have picked a better brush, but that's okay. It's not very easy to go in a back and forth kind of motion with this brush. Alright, then again I'm going to get just a bit of the texture in the background. Okay, and you could leave it just like this if you want. But you know me, I'm going to go back with a little of the metallic luster by Deco Art. And this is the Silver Spark. You could use any of the other colors. Well, maybe not any of them, but and with this, I'm only hitting the tops of the elements. Alright, something like that. Now giving it just a minute to dry. And I'm just going to give it a quick buff. This is just a cloth napkin. And you can see how that really brings up the shine. This frame is a little coarser, so it's a little difficult to give it a buff. Alright, now all that's left is to clean up that bit of glass. And I'm just going to hint at how to do this because it will make a scratchy sound on the glass. And I know a lot of people really don't like that. Alright, it's glass, so the craft knife won't hurt it. So, just go and scratch that dried paint out of the way. Alright. Alright, the last thing is to add a strand of these little LED string lights. They come with a little protective strip in the battery compartment that you just need to pull out. Alright. And then they'll work. Okay. Just gonna unwind these a bit so they will fill up the compartment of the jar. Alright, and then I would probably just use a bit of double-sided sticky tape and sticky tape it to the lid. Alright. You can see it does shine through the paint. And it does give a really pretty glow out the front. Alright. Thanks everybody for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Bye for now.